Oh, it is 12 o'clock. I call the Community Development, I can talk today, okay? Yeah. Community Development Commission to order. Will staff do a roll call?
Commissioner Stubbs.
Present.
Commissioner Johnson II.
Here.
Commissioner Tim.
Here.
Commissioner Cole.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Bailey. Commissioner Green.
Here. Here, Ron.
Commissioner Dean has an excused absence, and Commissioner Robledo.
Here. Hey, John. Hi.
Okay, first on the agenda is the approval of the May 21st minutes.
I move for approval.
Okay. All those in favor of the approval?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Turn it over to the staff for the scheduled business.
All right, so first scheduled business is, you might have noticed in the minutes that we had an incomplete motion last meeting. I think we got the motion, I think we got the second, but it wasn't on the recording, so we didn't know who had done it, and so we couldn't show on the record that it was a complete motion. So the motion was for allocating the non-public service funds to Family Connections, the extra amount that we got. So if we can redo that motion and get a first, second, and complete vote, that would be great.
So come to the daycare, right?
They're doing the micro enterprise loans to business owners that are operating in care. Yes.
I'll start it.
And I think I say any opposed.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, and then any opposed?
Okay, got it. All right, thank you. So the next thing that I had for discussion was just a review of our 2024 application process. I sent out some questions in the email, and then obviously you have the whole request for applications, and then also the application document itself to kind of look over and see what we got, and just also like your reflections from having gone through that process. You know, was there anything missing? Anything that should be more clearly articulated in the packet? Questions that weren't helpful should be revised or removed? And any other information or attachments from the agency that would be helpful. And I also had 2 items that I personally remember from our process that I wanted to bring up, but before I get into that, I wanted to comment.
I just have a couple of things, Commissioner. I just have that on the cover page. I would like to see cases submitted after the deadline will not be considered. And I'll also include applicants to be considered.
Do you want those on the like page? If it's a little bit late.
I know, but it should be, I think, consider, right? So if it's important for them to submit the application, they should know that these are some of the parameters.
What page was that on?
And the very first one, like that, your best.
Request for applications, yeah.
It's, yeah, so,
The application,
Yeah.
to be considered, or something along those lines.
sure.
So I can make a motion to do that?
I'm just taking notes right now. I don't think it makes that formal necessarily, but I'll make those adjustments. You know, I'll take notes on all of it and put it
Just
in.
bring it to me.
Again, where in the applications, as we are last year, is the requirement that if a faith-based organization that they don't use any of the activities for.
So we have them provide a certification that they sign off that any funding, if they are faith-based, that any funding that the CDBG will not be used for any faith-based activities. Yeah. So it's a separate document, that's one of those certifications that they provide.
Okay, do you have a copy of that certification?
Yeah, I didn't bring it today, but I could provide a copy if you like.
It's not the-
It's, yeah, it's in
Could you provide it back? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is it?
Certifications at the end, the attachments.
Is it?
I don't think I put all of the certification attachments in the
And it's part of the application packet. It's just an attachment that wasn't included. There's for certification. I mean, it's federal required certification.
Question, it's on page 40, and it's 17A through D, and it's probably clear, guys, but I just couldn't figure it out, where it says land acquisition, clearance, inspections, or something must be carried out by, that's your public or private nonprofit. I'm wondering, you have to have a for-profit person to do the clearing and things like that, wouldn't you? Maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
It's really talking about the applicant. I mean, the applicant has to be public or a nonprofit. And then they can hire somebody, but they're responsible for the activity, they're carrying out the activity, but they can hire, obviously, a for-profit business to do the work.
Okay, so this is basically the application to say, okay, this is what we want to do, we're going to do this clearing, whatever, so we approve it, and then they go ahead and do their.
Yeah, this matrix is pretty extensive. It lists all the kinds of eligible activities that an applicant could apply for. And then how they carry it out. I mean, the applicant and who we enter into a contract with, that's specified, but how it's carried out, I mean, obviously they have to comply with all sorts of laws, but
Yeah.
they can.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Hey.
I had a quick comment about I guess it's the application narrative, and then there was another section which talked about how we do the evaluation and had the points kind of match, for each different section that matches up with the spreadsheet that we did. And I think I was good communicating that to them, but it seems, I was wondering if it would be useful to align the narrative a little bit more with that, where they're kind of disjoint. Like, from the project feasibility, the narrative is actually split into two pieces, I think, in the point scoring system. I mean, you'd have to sit down and lay them side by side. I don't know if we want to do that here, but I think it would be useful if they were a little bit more aligned, so like the sections were aligned. And there is an extra section in the narrative, because I think the scope of work really doesn't. It's just a description of the scope of work, so it's not part of the evaluation. Like, so there isn't a section. There's not a section there that matched in the point scoring. You know.
Yeah, it's sort of like more overall, like, do we think that?
Well,
Yeah.
the scope of work is really kind of part of the description of what they're doing.
Right.
You take that out, there's a little bit more alignment. I think it would be useful. And I noticed when I went through, like when I've gone through the applications, I've used the narrative to try to evaluate it, and it can be a little confusing.
Yeah, we just have to crosswalk it a bit more,
Yeah.
so that it's like very one-to-one.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a really good suggestion. You can break it down a little different. You're having ideas kind of correspond. I mean, you always have different scoring, but yeah, assuming that you're looking at the same scoring criteria. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yeah. Organize the content.
Is that on GB?
It's page 22 is the application narrative was put in here, but we don't have this. Yeah. Yes.
So on page,
Application, the application.
yeah, and on page 15, so that's the thing on page 15 and 16 of the agenda, the evaluation criteria, what kind of managers are.
Right.
Which that was really.
Yeah.
Comment I had, if you look at page 22 on that proposed activity budget, towards the top, it's total CDP cost per person per unit. That's kind of the bang for the buck thing, but I don't see that anywhere else other than in that one line where we get the use that as, give weight to that as an evaluation factor.
Yeah, so you'd like to see that?
I would like to be that clearly given more weight. That
Like
you can use.
Description, paragraph, explaining.
On page 2,
It is one of the, it's, second bullet under the, application evaluation criteria. I don't think you want to residents and then it's second bullet under that bullet, but you might want to like comment. You might letter those application review criteria. Page 16 of the packet. It's like the number of people who will benefit from the activity, higher score for those serving more people is what it says. The evaluation criteria. So you could just look at the overall score, points allocated to that and adjust those, or you can.
I know when you put that on the criteria to say like number of people served per, yeah, instead of just saying like how many people are they going to serve? Are they going to serve for the amount of money they're asking for?
Right.
Kind of, you can
Well, we
refine that a little bit more to reflect that.
Yeah, I mean, you can add that in. I mean,
You said page 16 on the application?
Of the packet.
okay.
Oh, 2
Page
pages.
13, 16. So you've got your page 13. Yeah, I mean, some people ask for more money, but we also need to put a cap in there. Because having an agency apply for way more money than we actually have, and you know, if we're doing ratios, it's a little bit unfair.
If you develop that value, right? Because like some things, ratio is real important. Some things maybe, but also other things maybe a bit less so because you're doing things like shelter deaths, which that has an impact way beyond whatever the cost of that generated.
There's a public number for everyone to know how much grant money was received.
Should be.
For the action plan. There'll be a public hearing about it on the 20th. Yeah.
But you see historically that a certain amount that's public, that they would, one organization would try to get that full amount.
Just when people have applied, like,
Definitely, they're always asking for way more than everybody else.
Yeah.
yeah, we have more of that funding, so that does sort of set it for Dev Northwest in a way that for the public service.
Public services can, but
Apply the $50,000 and, you know, we get roughly $50,000 from public service, and that's where the challenge, I think, really lies.
and so usually in the notice to agencies will say, we have about this much money total toward public services and about this much for other activities is kind of what we might say, you know, when we're requesting applications. But I think for public services, you might want to have it because we always get way more than we
actually have.
money available.
Yeah, we want that into what we think the appropriate public service cap might be.
Each programs are different.
It's case by case.
Well, to the point about there is a disparity difference. It is kind of communicated in the application somewhere. I can't remember when it lived the different category of what they do. Public service is listed as kind of in a parenthesis that is 15% of the money. But it might be nice to spell that out as a very clear upfront thing. The information's there. Say, by the way, of the money we get, only 50% is going to public service. And then, I mean, I kind of agree, jumping ahead, the idea of a cap. Cap makes sense to people.
Yeah. I think it really helps because traditionally the commission hasn't wanted to award the entire public service to a single agency.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels a little bit disingenuous to say, apply for these funds, you know, all the way up to $50,000 when it's so unlikely that we would do that. And what we want is an application that is shaped around a realistic amount of money that we could actually allocate to them so that the program and what they're applying for matches what they could conceivably get. You know? And so we don't want them to get their hopes up and say, oh, we can do this great big thing, but we need all the money, knowing that we probably won't. I'd rather have them say, we could do this realistically.
Yeah, they could find funding in different pockets and
Yeah.
just look for the.
And if they- yeah.
something like that.
If they need the whole amount and we know we can afford that, I mean, better for them not to put the effort in to apply to something that's not likely to work out.
So if you average about $55,000 a year for public services, give or take a little bit, and you could consider dividing that by 2 and add a little. I mean, you could do the cap is 30,000 just in case somebody comes in and, you feel really scores high enough and deserves about half the money, or you can drop it down if you think you want more money to 2,
Would that solve, would
But
that
if
solve?
30,000 or 25,000 would be about half of what, or you could do a higher percentage of what just the amount of the year where we're asking them to apply. It's kind of a chicken and egg, but based on history, we've had about a little over $50,000 the last couple of years. So you could think about, doing an amount a little more than 50% if there's some applicant at that, or just your way to cap it. You might just consider going.
And that's been about like the max that we have awarded too. So we're in the last few years is I think around 25,000, 27,000. That's about the most that has been awarded. And so making a campus right around there, I think is helpful to people that are applying so they know.
Maybe you could notice in the application that says something along the lines of, apply for what you really can use. However, please remind yourself or keep in mind that the commission does want to serve as many as possible. And let them know that we may not get all of them.
Do you think there's a danger that if you put a cap in, that some applicants will go, oh, well, I really only need 25,000. It looks like I can apply for up to 30, so I'll just go ahead and write it for $30,000 and then the application.
And I think the only thing that they are you're seeing that with people applying for like 50,000, right?
Right. Okay, so they would just cap out.
But I think most applicants have been coming in with pretty modest, realistic amounts that they're applying for. And we're trying to,
And because the narrative that, awards generally average, I don't know.
We're missing that.
Because Cascades Wisconsin government always applies for a release. Certain agencies apply for a lot. Some apply for what they think they'll get that's reasonable, but having a cap might at least bring the ranges down into something where you're like, well, like I said, are they gonna be able to pursue this program if they don't get 70,000, even though we don't have 70,000 or $55,000, and then that way they're thinking about whether they even want to apply. And then if you've got a couple that are 30,000 and you're thinking of a ratio, then at least you're comparing apples to apples rather than a ratio of somebody who knew they were probably not going to get more than 25,000 and only apply for 25,000 or 30,000 compared to somebody that applied for the full amount, so it might help with scoring, but definitely looking at the number of people served for money is a good indicator for public services. Then the need to service the community at the time. I think it's listed in there as sort of some services take more time and labor, so that's why we've got a bunch of different ways to consider scoring.
Before we jump into the numbers on that, we'll check online and see if anyone has any notes or thoughts.
Commissioner Green and Commissioner Robledo, do you have any reflections?
No, I do not. Sorry, I'm sick.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Nothing so far from me. It all sounds good. As much as I can hear the audio, this is the first time I've
Do you want to
attended
increase volume on your computer?
remotely, and the audio is not ideal for
Sure
me.
how to do this.
But from what I can
I think you
understand,
can increase it on the TV volume.
We're trying to figure out a way to increase the volume for you.
no, it's not. it's not a volume issue.
Oh,
It's just
okay.
simply, yeah, it's not, it's lots of looping and things happening at once and so on. It's okay. I know now I should be attending in person, but I had some stuff happening here. It all sounds good. The discussion sounds good. And I especially appreciate the emphasis on the number of people or households that are going to be affected or benefited by a given grant and amount of money. I think that's really important, and I think it also is a good indicator in the evaluation of the application. So I hope that we can continue, keep that in our minds and be sure to look at that number carefully when the applications are being evaluated. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that number?
Well, I mean, I think as Ann's mentioned, I think somewhere around the 50 to 60% mark. So that's probably around $25,000 to $30,000. I think to me makes sense for a cap. But, you know.
Well, it doesn't mean you're gonna get that amount.
No, it doesn't,
That's
but
what
it's like the
they can
max you
apply
can apply for.
That makes sense to me as well, too.
I think the 30 is, sounds good.
Because you never know, sometimes there's something that can be up to $30,000 and it's really compelling and reflects the needs in the community. And also because while it's always been very competitive, we don't know how many applicants we'll get, especially if we instate a cap. And so we don't want to then discourage too many applicants and then fall short of, being able to allocate all the money or get quality applications. So I think that does make sense.
And then I think we have to kind of stick to our guns. I mean, if we say 30,000, whatever, and the other person was in, we decide, okay, this one's going to do a little bit more, so we up it to 40, and so I think we have to be careful on that too, so that.
Well, also in the application is.
Yeah, I know.
This is
You
it.
can't put everything in the application, I know that.
They're good readers, right? So does that sound
Sounds reasonable.
reasonable?
Okay. I think it'll be a good test run this year, just to see what it creates in humanity.
And, if there's some unforeseen outcome from the CAP this year, then we reevaluate next year. It's pretty low risk to.
Any other thoughts?
Next year, correct? Okay. That's number 2024. Yes, 2024, you buy it easily.
Yeah, this is what we use, but it'll be, last year, but then make a change.
Okay.
So another question that I had that I remember kind of coming up was the question about partial funding. So there's a question in the application is that can you use partial funding?
I think that's pushing in. Can this program go forward?
With or without?
Yeah. Or partial funding.
And so it seemed like that was a difficult question to evaluate in terms of like points awarded to me, it seems more informational. But I think that we maybe have some criteria or there's some confusion around how we use that question because sort of if someone needs the full amount or can use partial funding, how do you say which one is better, right? We just want to know as we're making those awards, like, is it even useful to them if we only award?
Is there any application review criteria?
I'm not sure if there's criteria, but it was a question that came up. I think it's in the application itself. And so I think it came up with how do we utilize that information? Is that something that we're using to award points or does or does not strengthen the application? So I just wanted to kind of have a discussion on how do we make that question useful? Is it useful as is?
how they would respond to it.
Yeah, like how do we take that information? And to me, I guess I look at it as purely being informational as we discuss awards, because we don't want to discuss an award that's partial for an applicant that needs the full amount. That's how I see it, but I just remember it coming up in the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, but if they won't be able to do the program without the request, and if you've got a cap on it, I mean, is that question a little bit more? I mean,
Yeah, it's a
you
good
want to know the cap. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with the points. It's just, I mean, what happens is a staff at these case will contact applicants after you've made tentative decisions to see if there's able to move forward with their tentative award, so that then you know if you need to readjust. Kind of do that in the review process. So I think Beth's question is, does it need to be a question in the application?
Maybe not a question, but it might be good to, maybe what you could do is make a very clear statement that historically applicants often receive less than they request. Right? So just say, so if you have to have a certain amount, if it's all or nothing, then just be aware there's a good chance you won't work something.
Yeah.
And then
That's what I meant.
that might actually be a gating item. They might qualify themselves if they say, well, I need 30 grand or nothing, I'm out like this year. Because historically that never really happened.
Right.
I think you need to know if it's only partly funded, that they can't do it. I think we need to know that. If they say, yes, I can do it if you give me partial funding, that's one thing. If they say, no, I can't do it. If I don't get all that I'm asking for, it's below the cap. And if I can't get that much, I can't do the project. We need to know that. That's really critical, I think.
We always end up asking in the application,
Well,
presentation, yeah, so might as well have it be answered.
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges that I noticed this year was, for instance, like one of the applications was for a position, like a staff position. And it seems to me unlikely that they would be able to proceed without a full award. But then the answer we got to that question was kind of like, we'll figure it out.
We'll
And
get back
that's
somewhere else.
Otherwise, yeah.
assess the likelihood of that, I guess. So I think that, maybe that's neither here nor there, especially with the cap in place, but I do think that the question has happened.
Yeah, it's like the thought of like, we aren't the sole people providing for the city, for these projects to go on. We are responsible to divvy out this grant for those that are applying. And do they need to apply for, 100% of the completion of this one project, or can they're gonna get sourcing from 4 or 5 different people? And a good business or a good nonprofit is gonna get the projects through without our money or with our money. Like, to me, we're not like a pinch pen like must, but we are responsible to divvy out this money to applicants who apply for it. And they're searching for multiple different resources, not just us.
Yeah.
Didn't something happen with, and I'm looking for the. And we're gonna build a house or buy a house and they have to build a fence around it and stuff, but they had to have that much money or they could.
That's right. Jackson Street, or Jackson.
Yeah, okay.
It's not public services, so, I mean, our narrative might be a little different for, in the past, we've had different, it's almost like different applications for public services roofers.
Yeah.
Not sure. They're just mostly very different, and your number of people served are often, it's different. So it's hard to evaluate them in the same way. So usually we've got public services and then we have not. But now that you're looking at a cap, I mean, I think that it would be really hard to fund a position like $30,000. The question may not be needed, or an answer may not be needed now. We'll assume that, you told us how many people you can serve per, the amount per person, that if we end up doing a reduced award, that it's going to be, your performance measure will be proportionally reduced by that amount. I mean, and we can think about it a bit more. This is, well, Look fresh from what you read the applications, and then after you do agency consultations and stuff like that, you may have some more thoughts. So this isn't necessarily the last chance, but you can work on thinking about something else fresh, and then you may have certain priorities that sort of float to the top. I mean, they should be based on your consolidated plan, but there may be some issue that arises. I mean,
Right, I have priority discussion in philosophy after we have the consultations and stuff. And maybe also for the funding, maybe there's a bit more emphasis on this part of the budget table, that's the amount they have actually secured versus the amount that's committed or yet, you know.
So maybe one thing you could do, I mean, right now that question is actually part of the evaluation, it's part of the agency capacity and experience. So maybe rather than having it be something that they're actually evaluated on and scored on, you take it out of there, but just make it a question.
Yeah.
You can respond to Larry's comments like that. They please affirm, tell us yes or no, can you work with less money? And we would at least have that piece of the information, but be actually scoring them.
Yeah. Reasonable. Take it out of the scoring criteria, but leave it in the application.
Yeah, we don't want to approve a project that they don't, if they don't have all the funding secured, we don't want to approve it where they say, well, we'll find the extra 5,000. What if they don't? You know, we only want projects that are going to go forward because we don't want our program messed up because some applicant can't perform. That's a problem for us too.
Right. That's precisely the concern I'm trying to, avoid as being in that situation.
Don't they have to basically prove that they use the money for that reason? And then if they don't, that money.
Yeah, they have to use the money for what they.
Stated in their application.
Right, and then it goes to their contract.
So if they can't find funding and they can't put that fence up,
Yeah,
carpet or something like that.
yes, which on an individual project basis totally, then, maybe we reallocate the funds so they can come back to CDC, we reallocate it to something else. But overall, we have expectations about how much money we're getting out the door each year. And so we don't want funds to just sit until, much later, and then we found out we were trying to pull it together and we can't, we haven't spent any money and that sort of thing, so.
So if a person
Right.
or organization comes to us and says, we need 18,000 X, and one time they go, well, we can't use it because we don't have the rest of our funding, that money would come back and we'd have to meet and allocate it.
Potentially. I mean, it is situation dependent, so we would also be talking to them, okay, well, how much, are things in the works for funding? When would that other funding come in? Is it a matter of extending your contract for a few months and then you'll be able to do it? Or is this just not gonna happen? And so then we do.
If that's the case, I'm more speaking about
If it's not gonna happen, then yeah, we would probably terminate the contract and then that funding would come back. We reallocate that to ideally an activity that was very similar to what was the initial intent.
what is the past experience in to take? Well, I mean, it's not that we gave the money and then get it back. It's that, hey, circumstances change. We're not going to be able to pursue this, so we're basically canceling the contract, and it kind of gives us. They've agreed, and then we just, I said, come back and hey, we've got this funding that this agency wasn't able to use for the project fell through or what. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes agencies will not use all of their funding, and then we have leftover funding. This happened where we had extra money with the CARES Act. It hasn't really happened with regular CDBG. We usually, it's the timing and things are just a little bit off on the timing, and then we'll just do a contract extension. It's usually a need to cancel the contract. Now, if we find that something is going on that's violating any of the contract rules, we will terminate the contract because we have to make sure that we feel confident that the activity would have been carried out following all of the rules and, according to everything that they submitted and to the agency bylaws and whatever. So, yeah.
So it is rare, but also something we want to continue to avoid. But yeah.
But our contract language has information in that, so that, everyone can get out of the contract for reasons that are in the contract.
GCF.
Do we have employees that audit? Well, we audit by government financially or other. So we act something that I'm monitoring is that we've had that we're probably going to have our have an accountant that works for a couple of departments up here that will review the financial statements that are submitted so that and we know that these are okay, I don't see any errors or whatever, so that we have more certainty since we're not necessarily financial experts in the soundness of the organization. So it was something we were advised to do. And same thing, if they have to submit an audit to us or a year financial statement, we'll have our accountant person review those so that we get his blessing so that, and they were a flag, we can at least talk to the agency about it and determine whether they're funding their own or canceling the contract.
And everything as far as the CDBG grants are done is on reimbursement basis. So there's submitting documentation at 1%, and then we're giving them the money. It's not a grant in the same way that, we got this grant, we give you a lump sum, use it. Everything comes to us and then it's paid out.
Yeah. That provides security to us that we review every invoice and receipt or timesheets and all that and make sure that everything is according to the contract.
My ears just kind of slowed down. And you say that they have to provide the invoice and then we pay.
Yeah, they don't get
Oh,
money.
that helps right there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the other question I had. Yeah. Okay.
Were there other reflections on the application or the information that, yes, or the process in general?
Yeah. If I remember correctly, early this year, before applications were due, we had a couple organizations come in and told us about what they did. And I just throw it out for discussion. I don't know if that was useful or not, because we heard from them, and that was interesting, but it wasn't all that relevant to anything necessarily. They hadn't applied yet.
Right.
And there are other organizations that applied later, so why are we listening to these people?
Yeah. Yeah, but I appreciate that, but I guess the idea is that regardless of whether or not those agencies choose to apply, we're trying to get a sense of what are the needs in the community that we're seeing from agencies that serve people that CDBG could benefit.
We're hired to consult with a variety of agencies. Now, sometimes we have duplicate agencies doing, the list is super long. It's even consulting with the Chamber of Commerce. It's a really long list. And what we try to do is make sure that you have a good understanding of who the service providers in our community for different needs, because we actually have to talk about them in our plan. And then this is something I was actually bringing up. I'm glad you brought it up, Larry. But sometimes if an agency is going to apply, it seems like you've got a duplicate, your time and their time coming in for an agency consultation. But if it doesn't seem helpful for you to hear any presentations, we could just try to get the kinds of information that we might need for the action plan and do those consultations ahead of time and just give you a summary of our notes from those meetings. Now, it is sometimes helpful. We try to group agencies, like all the agencies that are serving the homeless population or all the agencies serving whatever together. Sometimes it's helpful for them to hear what's going on amongst themselves if they aren't meeting. Now, the homeless groups are usually attending different meetings, but it's something I was thinking about where, gosh, I just did an agency consultation, and then now I applied, I'm gonna have to come to a presentation. I feel like, wow, that's kind of two times, maybe a little bit of a burden on the staff, but it really is intended. If there's a pressing need out there that maybe we didn't identify in our consolidated plan, it's hard to do the 5-year planning, right? You're guessing at the needs that we didn't know about because we didn't talk to the agencies. You may, from those consultations before the applications go out, you know what, we heard that this issue is really an issue. We want to give more points to a group that's helping serve, let's just say it's kids from 18 to 24, or seniors, or whatever it is, or accessible housing, or maybe there's some issue that comes up.
I think it came up from a variety of public service providers that this wasn't their service, but what they saw was their clients were really struggling with childcare, and so that's something that it came out of those consultations that like, okay, well that should be a priority. That's clearly a gap that's has been especially difficult for our local schools. Another year, it was clear that the issue around homelessness and giving people access to shelter, and then from shelter wraparound services and hopefully transitioning out of shelter was a primary issue. And so I think we try to have those agencies come to give us that up to date. What's the picture look like right now? We know what we did for our 5-year plan, but this year, is there anything that's coming up that's a particular concern? But maybe I think that potentially maybe there's different questions that we should be asking to make those consultations be helpful, right? To think about too.
Yeah, and maybe figure out how to use your time wisely. And also, another thought I had is there's a public hearings 2 times a year to get your input on community needs that could be addressed with CDBG funds. One of them is when we do the action plan, and one is when we do the report, and those are council public hearings. And the agendas can be pretty busy, but I was thinking that maybe there's an opportunity for the council, because the council usually doesn't hear from the agencies directly. Maybe there's an opportunity to figure out sometimes there's joint work sessions with different city committees with the council.
I'd like to have every work commission do at least one joint.
Yeah, if we could figure out that in the schedule, that might be an opportunity to highlight, what are issues and concerns from council members, and are those things that CDBG funding could address? That's one thing, because there may be misconceptions about the ability of CDBG funds to fix all of our problems, right? There's just not enough money. But it could be an opportunity also if we were doing agency consultations, we could just invite more people to hear them. And if it's helpful, the mayor does try to invite agencies to sort of give a little bit of a presentation for some of the council meetings so that council is aware and the community is aware of what agencies do. There may just be a more strategic way to do it. So I'm glad Larry brought that up and we can think about that. It's just also figuring out, whether there's information that we might be able to get in a different way so that we're conscientious of everyone's time, but also the need to hear from them, especially if they're not going to apply.
Yeah. We'll try to give more thought to it.
I will continue to invite on the organizations to come and present, because once a month in council meetings, they do attend the presentation. And like last week with Rams had, we've had literally I've had several since I've been there, and it's been really valuable for them. I've had them come with the hands, I've had all the other hands come. And the feedback I get from the organizations.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Yeah, and we can use those presentations they get to council. We can just keep on top of who's presented and get that information. But we can also send out a form to the agencies that, hey, it's our time of year to assess the community needs and get that information and share it with you guys. And maybe that would inform whether there are any agencies that we would ask if they'd want to attend. I don't know. We're just kind of always running behind by the time summer is over, trying to figure out what to squeeze in. So maybe fewer agency consultations might save a little bit of time before we get the application out. It's just an opportunity to, is there a certain priority, based on all the, data that we found that you want to try to emphasize? We never know if somebody's going to apply or not, but there may be an issue that you surfaced us in the past, like the child care.
We'll keep working and strategizing on that. I think that's the most beneficial. So the next thing on our agenda was the class meeting about learning more about what exactly are the eligible activities at CDG. So I included the lovely matrix of activities. Yeah, sure. And I also took a look. I think it was Commissioner Green last meeting that asked about the conversion of building to residential, if that was a rehab or a new construction. So I looked into that, and what I had found was that if it increases the building's footprint, then you're kind of in that line. You need to get go through some specific asking HUD, is this new construction or is it rehab? But if you're maintaining the building footprint and you're not substantially increasing like the intensity of the use, that it would still fall under the rehab projects. So that is one way that we could, use PDBG funds to rehab something to create housing potentially. We haven't had applications for that, but it is something that's eligible.
Yeah, rehab from commercial to residential usually it kicks it into a really high level review, and it doesn't mean that the project is supported, but the funds are pretty good. Now, something that we haven't talked to you guys about, but comes to mind when we got the letter from HUD. If there was a need in the community, let's say a larger housing project, that's a conversion of maybe it's one of our downtown buildings into housing, something like that. That's a good example. We have the ability to borrow money from the federal government. It's called a Section 108 loan, and it can be up to 5 times our total annual award. So using simple numbers, if we got, 350,000 isn't simple. Let's say 300,000 times 5. We can borrow up to $1.5 million. It's a lower interest rate, but that means all of the money over the next 5 years, or whatever amount you borrow, would then go to that project. So you would, but let's just say you've got maybe you want to always do public services, but the remaining money, let's just say it's around $250,000 each year. Maybe you want to, if we can use it to really get something that needs more money in, we could go, okay, this year we're going to, we still have to open it for competition. We have to figure out how to get around that. Look into that. But let's just say it's some organization and they want to put in, 50 units, because we know that 100 units are lacking in our community. Maybe they can borrow $500,000 or $750,000, 3 years of the non-public service money, and basically we would just use our CDBG loan. Our annual award every year. We just gotta go, okay, that $150,000 is going to start paying it off. So you can do up to 5 times. So what we haven't had is, and because we don't get a lot of money, it means all the money is kind of going into one pot. But it's really something that we can consider, and then it would really streamline, for future years going forward. You might be doing this one project with a huge need that you consider outweighs the benefits of doing a little bit, smaller grants because we never know who's going to apply for the non-public service funding. So if there's a project out there that, in our conversations with the agencies, hey, we're planning this, but we really need a lot more funding, and we know that we need this much in order to leverage state resources, because we know that really can't be successful getting a lot of money that's a state without having a local pot to leverage. Maybe it's a way to use CDBG. Now, the bad news with CDBG is that $1 kind of makes everything need to follow all the federal rules. So there's a little bit of a cost to that.
And there's a version who went to the report. There's the version. So,
Yeah, so I mean, state money has strings, but they're not nearly as tough. So yeah. Interesting. Anyway, it's just something that we haven't talked about, and we love to plan ahead and work with agencies to sort of figure out what does your short-term, medium-term horizon look like? What do you see your needs? Because we really want to be strategic with these funds if we can. If we can have this money help leverage a lot of other money, it's just, again, it has to be an eligible activity, but rehab is actually one of those. New construction is tough because the agency has to be an eligible agency, and it's very limited. It's eligible. We're not able to build, but anybody's not able to build, but they could do a rehab, like building an existing building. Maybe there's there is a building, the old Opera House. I mean, not looking to purchase it, but it's been out of commission for years and years. So something like that maybe would have been eligible, and you might have long-term affordable housing for 30, 50, whatever time period is that you put on that. Well, we have the downtown areas all over the urban district, and it's going to be sunsetting soon. So we're looking at we're doing the background work to determine our capacity for urban renewal in other areas of the state, encouraging construction and raise money. Anyway, it's a big process, but yes, we did do a renewal back in 1999. 2000 was the plan for houses, so those are pretty much, unless that's a decision that council needs to make, whether there's still an allowed indebtedness, then the agency can continue to borrow money to do certain projects. I mean, you have to determine what are those priority projects. For preservation is one of them, because it's really hard to rehab historical buildings, right? I mean, but you don't want to lose is it affordable housing? You might do this. Now, there are other tools out there that we're exploring with the housing implementation plan. The multiple unit property tax exemption is only going to be eligible in our core areas or future climate-friendly areas. So that'll be property tax exemption up to 10 years for, in exchange, they have to either pay money into a pot to raise money for affordable housing or provide a little bit of affordable housing. So there are some other tools out there that we're trying to leverage and get in place to incentivize development in especially in our downtowns or areas where we want to see more mixed use. We talked a little bit about this a couple months ago, because I know that Larry's brought this up before, but there's other planning that goes on. We see to just the source of funding, but all the planning that happens out there, but not something that is part of the commission.
Are there other questions or comments on any of the eligible activities or information?
Curious if the eligible activities in the application could be sent.
I think we do have.
There's a table in there, and it's like a summary of.
There's a brief list. I think
Page 8.
Yeah, and then we also we cover it when we have them do their pre-application workshop, and also online with our full manual. So it's a big manual that has a full list of everything. Yeah, and if they have any questions or or if they have a project and I'm not sure what activity or if it's eligible, then. Yeah. So before we kind of wrap it up, I did just want to talk about kind of the coming month. So July, summertime, and I will be on vacation during our normal meeting time. So I was imagining that we would take a break.
Wait, hold on.
I'm going to Denmark.
Nice.
Yeah, my wife's family, some of the family is Danish, so we're gonna get the family.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so July what?
July break,
July nothing?
but in August. But meet in August. So for the August meeting, we'll have our caper report, like our performance report from this past year, how the money was spent, and what the outcomes were, and then also the analysis of independent and fair housing choice. So for those, we'd like to have a public hearing option for public comment at that meeting. And so that will be one of our evening meetings, one of our 2 evening meetings.
Well, wait, when is the,
It could be August or September for.
yeah, so that's been great, and so the public hearing for the caper will be that first council meeting back in September. There's the first week of September, I think, or the third week of September. We just have to look at, I think it's, I don't have the calendar with me, but the CDC meeting, yeah, or whether we need for these consultations or figure out any approach, if, you know, more of an open opportunity for input on community needs that might help you determine, and it could be anyone comes, not just agencies. Maybe there's an open session on community needs that is before you do the application. I mean, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. But we did want to try to wrap up the fair housing plan. We did a lot of work on it. It's only a little bit of work, but for the data and the public input, you know, too old to use it. We wanted to try to get that wrapped up and have a public hearing on that in September. So, August. Well, this group normally meets the third Monday of the month at noon. And, you know, you don't. So we have a meeting. We just need to have a quorum, right?
Hold the hearing in the September meeting, I think.
Well, probably later because I think if you're going to need time to work on the items, but if the caper's not going to be ready, the caper won't be ready.
Yeah, it was going to be tight. Yeah.
So,
And I had an agency consultation, yeah, we could, you know, whatever better other strategy for assessing community, we'll start at the meeting with that. I think we'll pick up on Monday at noon, and then September we'll do an evening meeting.
And when would that be?
probably look at the calendars. I think we tried to do Tuesday nights at the right?
Yes.
Right.
Got that.
Oh, in early September. So we also have planning commission on Monday nights. So
Yeah.
2 of the members are on the planning commission. So we'll just have to look at that in a moment. Probably we'll let you know. Wrong is kind of
Sounds right.
The August meeting, I'll be here.
Good check.
Are you going to be here?
We guys meet in August.
And I could send out the dates for the.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then September, we're going to continue with assessing community needs, could include agency consultations or something else. And then during August, we're working on getting public input on housing implementation plan. And so I thought September would be an appropriate time to provide a summary of some of the input that we received and kind of where the housing implementation plan is at.
And also, I mean, we can use this as an opportunity for input on some of the comprehensive and then the agreements. There's development code updates, but then there's policy proposals to try to raise money for affordable housing, and then try to write letters when that happens. So there may be some opportunities to just put on our public input process.
I do have a request for community patient consultations. We do it in bigger rooms, but they can all be in here listening to each other.
Yeah, we can make sure we get kind of a lamp room.
Yeah.
And the audio is good in the chambers, so that will be helpful to.
Right, well, we don't have public coming, this room is more convenient for us, but anytime we have public coming, we do try to book that other room. Because it does get crowded in here, it's kind of weird to have people sitting behind you. And, yeah.
I love it for this because this is for just open conversation. But I was in the movie. I was walking. I big head, lovely hair. I don't know, but hang it up.
Well, just don't forget the camera's right there, so you guys are looking at the way. And John are, getting there. Yeah.
All right, so then in October, I'll just have kind of the final agency consultations or meeting assessment, and then we'll discuss what if any priorities should be put in the application packet, and how they will go out at the end of October, early November. Is there anything that I'm missing that you guys are like, I'm craving to have this on the agenda?
Can we go over the list of people you're sending to?
The agency? Yeah,
Not today.
not today. So we can talk about that in the meeting.
Like the latest. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know each of us has a nonprofits and local service or ability community need that we don't know about, like Ramshead Ministries, Faith Hope and Charity. They have several thousand, almost over $1 million for help emergency housing and stuff like that. So organizations show.
Absolutely. So that's kind of what I have going ahead for the next several months. And I'll open up meeting dates too, so we can give it.
Typically, third Monday of the month is typically when we do evening meetings. There are regular cadence for that.
We have usually done the Tuesday. Yeah. The Tuesday after the Monday that we would normally have it is what we've done.
The third Tuesday usually, but we might do kind of look at when that council meeting is in September, so that people can. Well, there are council meetings in September, the last week of September.
No, there's no city council meeting.
August. September.
Yeah, September, the end of September, so it's totally 6 weeks. So the second week of August, I went through last week.
Right, but there are meetings. We have a council hearing on the 26th.
We need to.
The 24th. There are hearings in the council.
Very
I'm talking about city council. We just want to make sure that we're not having a meeting maybe the day before the city council meeting if we're trying to prepare any comments that we might write. We just want a little bit of a buffer. And then for those of you that are on city council, that you don't have 3 night meetings in a row. But we'll try to avoid it being the Tuesday between Monday and Wednesday council meetings.
I think your places is that they're Tuesday evening, it's just one class.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
So, yeah, so we can look at it a different day. That's good. I'm glad. Okay. For the timing of it, definitely.
All right. Okay. Do we have any business from the public? Any business from the commission?
So just to state that question, I'm always interested about more revenue activities we do. Thank you for saying that. Fees. One thing I did a little research on was microloans. I like what Dev Northwest does for people, but on a much larger scale. And there are cities that have programs, and ones I could find were funded one of 3 ways: through CDBG, and that's funding, through some sort of fee generation, usually from part of it is Catalyst, isn't it? The charitable endowment or something gave the city X amount of money. Because they're really interested in keeping seniors in homes, repairing roofs, all the types of things that Dev Northwest does, but on a much larger basis, as you can imagine. One of the cities I looked at was Worcester, Massachusetts. And so I'm just wondering if, and then the third way is to go out and find these foundations that do have monies that they want to contribute to these sorts of things. Like, well, I mean Jackson Youth just got a huge foundation award, didn't they? So, it's going out and applying for those types of grants and things. And I think there's no reason cities can't do that. So my question then on that statement is have we ever entertained the thought of a micro program with citizens? And if so, have we ever looked into that and trying to funding? There's a lot of houses.
Well,
Part.
we have looked into that, and I mean, the thing is Denver Northwest, so we already have an agency that provides loans, and so for us to do the same service, and that's just not our business, and our contracts we found are a little bit clunky and all that. So the services you mentioned, and I know there's more, but Denver Northwest is already doing that. They also try to also get money, from us. So they could get the money. Now, can we try to help build a stronger relationship where we're maybe trying to get money, but an existing partner manages a program, because it going through the city, I have to tell you, contracts and insurance and all that stuff, especially when you're talking about small loans, it's just not a good fit, because our risk assessors have got, we required these poor little businesses to get like a couple $1 million of insurance, and then, it was a lot of money. So we found that it's easier to pay Cascades Western Council of Governments or Denver Northwest to administer funds for us. So could the city try to go look for that? Well, the city is supposed to be hiring a grant writer. There's a lot of needs for, trails and all sorts of stuff. That please get this person and whatever. And then we figure out, I don't know how when we ever get a person, we'll figure out how to determine priorities and going after funds all over the place. But once there is a person, we can figure out, well, how do we meaning our department, how do we get to cap them, and what kind of grants are they able to go for? But this is why having an agency consultation like Denver Northwest, who hasn't, they come in and talk about the housing rehab program, but knowing more about their other programs and asking those agencies, hey, do you try to get money from other sources so that then you can even provide more money? Or where's the niche, where's the gap in what you're providing, and do you know of anyone that's providing that service? And that's where like Family Connections has sort of stepped in and started providing those loans. We used to have Linden Community College do small business loans, but then we did it, and that's when we realized our requirements are just a little more than what a small business wants to deal with. So that's not to say that can we try to bring more money into our community? We would love to do that. We don't have staff capacity right now to do that. But
and I think it goes back to that big question, like what's the benefit? And for those like housing rehab loans, that Northwest is already doing really successfully. If there came to be a case where they needed a department application, I'm sure we would be willing, but it hasn't, that hasn't come up. I think that they have a better case to make to a funder about expanding their existing programs than we can to say we're going to get money to give to them Northwest. Does that mean
we can help them with data?
Well, that's a follow-on question to that. Yeah, that's cool. I remember kind of back in my mind that you were bringing up a grant person, so that's awesome. I've seen that some cities actually actively go out and themselves to foundations, states, basically, which you consider, us as a charitable source of your funds, because you've lived in our community for you benefit from et cetera, et cetera. Language that you around that.
Definitely. There's even an agency I watched this great seminar on how to raise money to pay for all your city projects. Well, you can pay somebody because they know exactly. You have to prioritize what projects you want. Is it, this or that? What is it? And then they know there's this amount of money, that amount of money, there's this feature. They know all that stuff, and then they go get the money for you. and they're experienced at it. So rather than like a grant writer that we might hire that maybe has a little bit of experience writing some grants, but they know how to actually, because they know the language, they know all the players, and they know the people in Washington. You can kind of do that as a city. Now, I mean, this is a council decision, but I think once we at least have a grant writer, we might know a little bit more about that capacity. But I wanted to also mention that Habitat has a new director, and that director has a lot of experience being on Habitat, youth build and everything, and living in Florida. And they're trying to do some of the service, like they can do rehabs for veterans or for seniors and do different programs, trying to bring back some programs that Habitat has talked about rather than just building. So I think hearing from them and what they're doing, and when they go out for money, we write a support letter. And what I'll do is, if you write a letter for this because I really help. If the city can provide a little bit of funding to help them leverage stuff, that's where if we had a pot of money that was a good fit that wasn't CDBG, which is what we're going to try to talk to the council about. Well, Habitat, they came from Central Finance. It's different. It's different. But I mean, they have a new director. I'm just letting you know that things will be changing. So not only that it has to be talking about agency consultations, but I'm just thinking about some of the things you're listing where we might have needs, in your neighborhood that you notice as the aging population. So Habitat may be doing more on the front and addressing these, so you can hear from them, but how can we support their efforts at getting money? And then can that be the city grant writer, writing money, but then we have to contact, that's a really good question. I think other cities or cities that are, where you know that you have success or getting other people's money to do what we need to in our community, absolutely.
Yeah. Because I have business, where are we at with farm workers?
We'll have to enter into a new contract with them, but they did receive their money from the state for phase one. We heard about that like about a month ago. Yeah, they can come, and they're not going to be applying for CBG money, but they can come, and I know yeah, I'll try to talk to them. They are at home, and I don't have all the details. They're just now going to hold a pre-application meeting with about their project.
I want to let you know that why is it started for nonprofits? There were 40 units in all two sites over. I think you attended that meeting as well. Fund chair, one in Millersburg and one in Albany on Price Road. The land on the Price Road has infrastructure to provide. Millersburg has to be completely redone, roads and everything. So it looks good for us. We're trying to not use federal dollars because we just transfer with that. We have a lot of interest. We already have $5 million to start that project. So we're excited about it.
Veterans housing.
Veterans housing.
Will it be affordable?
A little bit affordable, yeah. Because we have a lot of veterans in town that either can't live by themselves or in a shelter or.
So Ballard Place, the Limited Housing Authority, they did start construction this fall on 30 units. Well, 29.
Well, that'd be 70, right? That'd be 70.
Yeah, and that's for disabled. Yeah, almost a disabled veteran, like 21 and 8, and they're working with Lynn County Mental Health. So that is Limited Housing Authority. So the YMCA got $1 million from the state to do pre-development, looking into this other housing that we're talking about.
So we're talking about going well. The first meeting was 40 people. Those soldiers will there. They represent members, show service staff, and they're all members. The tiny home village created on the village. Grand opening of the 13th. The money factors as well.
Yeah, we did 350 and then 100,000 in PBG.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's exciting. I mean, they're trying to do that. Yeah, right. We just don't have like that $1 million shot in the arm that we got was really lucky.
Yeah.
Well, we need more of that. Well, I have an opportunity yeah, because other cities are raising money. And this tax, it doesn't have one, so we're going to be asking the council to consider one. And they're raising big, like Corvallis is leveraging $125 million in construction right now with less than $1 million. They are building hundreds of affordable housing units right now. It's amazing. So, and our neighbors, smaller cities have the CT, and so they have money to attract it. Market rate builders are coming to Oregon because the state's programs are so attractive, but you have to have a local contribution in order to actually be successful in the state, because it doesn't work if you don't. So the Farm Workers Housing Development Corporation first applied for funding, they didn't get it. Then when they got our support, they applied for funding again and they got the money. And it doesn't, so the examples we heard from Corvallis, I mean, $250,000 levered $5.5 million, and then for housing first project, $45,000 leverage $22 million. And you know, just other cities have that money, and if we don't have that, these developers are not going to build in Albany. And it's also it's market rate people that are building. It's not just affordable housing developers, and they figured out how to make it, and their affordability period is 60 years.
Who's responsible for that, making that happen?
Well, the city of Corvallis has a tax, so does Bend, so does Newport, so does Bedford. So, I mean, a lot of other cities have the tax. They just pay it at the time of development, at building permit. Well, before.
No, we talked about it. Why was it never brought to us?
We haven't talked about it at the council level, so we're bringing a memo to the council to talk about it.
Only like as part of the hit.
We only said that was one strategy to try to meet our affordable housing, meet our housing needs in general.
Yeah, what's the
Fire for that.
Well, right now we should be getting the memo that is for our draft policy memo, and then we're got the council break and everything. I can't remember. We're probably going to the council. We might try to do a work session in July. Well, I know, but it hasn't been a real policy discussion or ordinance or resolution. There's been no vote on that. So
would it be anything that we mentioned?
well, yeah. So we still have time because council can be on break. So they're going to be. I don't think I was looking at a work session in July to go over these ideas, and we might still have that. But when it actually goes to a hearing.
Yeah.
And then we also are trying to get public input on some of these, more on the development code changes, but we'll try to get public input. There'll be an opportunity for, as a commission and as an individual or as a representative of the agency or just a resident, whether you support it or don't support it. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, everybody. 2018 college meeting to adjournment.